Hi folks, my name is Audax Gawler and I'm here tonight for Sexbox interviewing Alok just before their show in Sao Paulo, discussing the possibilities for trans futures, the next generation, collective planetary transformation, and fostering global conversation across continents about what it means to be trans and what we might collectively become. With the convergent crisis going on in the world and all the opposition that is being faced by trans communities, there's never been a more important time to think about the legacies we're leaving and the sorts of ancestors we're becoming. If you want to follow along with Sexbox, take a look at the Instagram account and stay tuned for the Transcestry program coming in 2026. Thank you so much for being here and speaking with us, Alok. The first question I would love to ask you is about an idea of not being trans enough. It appears in global communities there seems to be a consistent anxiety around being trans in the correct way. Somehow we are, even in non-binary bodies and different sorts of trans expressions, trying to conform to ideas of what is a correct transness to express in the world. And I'm wondering what you might say to trans youth who are concerned about how their transness is expressed or how it is read.
Well, I would say that there's no one way to be. No one way to be a man, no one way to be a woman, no one way to be trans, no one way to be non-binary. And that's the joy of being alive, is that each one of us has our own unique, complex expression. And it's devastating to me that a movement that was predicated off of challenging gender norms is now trying to reinforce them. It's kind of like gender norms 2.0. Where we say, okay, now there's an appropriate way to be trans or to be a trans woman or to be non-binary. And it's heartbreaking because we find ourselves in the same rut over and over and over again. Other people's genders shouldn't be our business. We don't have jurisdiction over how other people live their lives. And that's a wonderful thing and a great thing. I think that the fear becomes like, unless we have some degree of homogeneity, then we won't have unity. So I think that the deeper desire is like, how do we develop a sense of coalition and unity that doesn't require us having to iron out our differences? And I think that that's totally possible, to create formations where people are allowed to be the fullest and freest version of themselves and not feel like they have to appeal to pre-existent standards or definitions. So my advice to anyone who is dealing with that anxiety is, you're so tremendously and enormously valid. You belong to a sacred and unbroken chain of people before you who have found ways to manifest, femifest, build a life that people thought were impossible. And this pain that you're feeling is so real, but I want you to know that it's deeply shared and felt, and you are so tremendously beautiful.
So building on this idea of the unique trans perspective and the things that we might offer as a community to the world, we're living in a time of trouble, of convergent crisis. And one of the things that we've been discussing in Sexbox and the conversations that have emerged this year is an idea of the transplanetary. So what it is that we as a community can offer towards planetary regeneration. And I'm wondering what you foresee as a trans regenerative future in which a trans community can offer something towards climate crisis through being a community that are so perfectly placed to consider transitional times and transformation.
There's this really heteronormative idea that trans people can't reproduce, or there's a way in which a particular definition and understanding of reproduction gets weaponized to punish trans people. But what that does is narrow what reproduction actually is. Reproduction is not just the creation of new bodies, it's the creation of new worlds. And trans people have always had an instrumental part to play in the creation of a new world. I see transness as inaugurating a new world paradigm. And what that new world paradigm is, one which looks at all of the things that weren't working and actually says, I'm going to do something better than this. What is transition but a practice of saying out loud, I don't like this shit and I'm going to make something more beautiful? I see transition as a practice of world making, of actually saying, okay, what is the kind of world that we want to create? And for me, that world is one in which values creative expression over conformity, a world in which people are allowed to change their minds and to unfurl for their entire lives, a world that celebrates becoming rather than requiring people to be set in stone forever. And the way that relates to climate is there's this way in which we continually are taught and sold that we have to always scale up, that we have to be massive. But actually, that world making is something that can happen even at the realm of imagination. So I see transness as an intervention that actually says, like, okay, within our own quiet solitude, we can actually birth selfhoods and world making that are more sustainable and more beautiful.
Building on from those ideas, a lot of the conversations we've been having this year have been around ancestry. And in the conference, Arta Paris presented and spoke about what sort of ancestors we'd like to become. So thinking back through time across the deep trans history that we share as a global human race and towards the future of the generations still to come, I'm wondering how you might imagine this moment in our trans history and also what sort of legacy you would like to leave behind.
I really feel like ancestry is what grounds me. When people ask me, how do you have the courage or the confidence to keep going? It's because I have a deep connection with trans and gender variant people who existed before me. In the US, we recently lost Miss Major, who is an incredible Black trans woman activist at the Stonewall riots. And Miss Major used to just call and check up on me all the time and tell me so many stories from back in the day. And that makes me feel this deep sense of not indebtedness, but enmeshment, interconnectivity with people who came before me, which then feeds a sense of duty to the next generation. And the legacy that I'm hoping to leave is one in which people really understand that this linear definition of time, that things get better over time, isn't necessarily true. There have been freer moments in the past, which means that there could be more repressive moments in the future. So we can't take progress as a given. We have to always struggle for change. And so the legacy I want to give is one of flamboyance, irritating flamboyance, a desire to be so visible and so visceral in that visibility that we can't be erased despite all the attempts to do so. There's going to be so many systems and projects trying to disappear trans life. That's how it's always worked, so that they can weaponize the accusation that we're new. We're not, but it's a political strategy to divorce us from our ancestors. So my hope is to be so visible that that attempt to erase me just can't work.
And thinking further into those futures, it's hard to ignore that in mainstream Western colonized imaginaries, we're still given our futures in a binary framework. We're given utopias and dystopias. And as we try and make presents that are more celebratory of our transition, of our magnificent ongoing transformation, I'm wondering what you might give a slogan to for a future that was a transtopia, a future that celebrated that all of the time, that expected adaptation, expected fluidity, expected ongoing and permitted ongoing change for everybody across every facet of society.
A slogan.
A slogan?
Oh.
I know, I put you on the spot.
Okay, the slogan on the spot, I would say, is embrace your unruly beauty. I really feel like beauty is a disobedient political force, because beauty is about self-birth and asserting to the world who we want to be. Our parents do an okay job, but now it's up to us to finish it off. And beauty's not supposed to make us feel comfortable or delighted. Beauty is supposed to frustrate us and push us and provoke us. And I think there's nothing more beautiful than people being themselves. And beauty's kind of a compass that pushes me to keep on asking myself, who do I want to become? How do I get there? So that would be my North Star. Be your unruly beauty.
So we're joined by the Transgeneridade crew, who are a youth movement out of Sao Paulo, started by someone who was only 12. And at the moment, they're making a documentary about trans children as a transformative force in the world. So what they would love to ask you is, how do you foresee trans kids being a transformative force in the world? How do you think they already are or will change society?
You know, the truth is, like, I was born free, and then shame entered the chat and distorted my self-concept and made me spend more of my time trying to make other people comfortable than be myself, which is a real tragedy. And it's a tragedy shared by millions of adults across the world, is this deep sense of who would we be outside of who we've been told we should be. And so I think that the moral clarity and leadership that trans young people are giving to the world is go process your shit, don't take it out on us. It's an invitation to say, this is my responsibility. My healing is something that I have to do for myself. So, you know, James Baldwin once said that we all go through great lengths to avoid an honest mirror, and I think that's what the work, the transformative work is being an honest mirror. And I think right now there's this deep mirror that's being posed to all of us adults of like, are we okay with who we've become on the other side? And I think many of us are not. And it's too painful to accept that. So instead we turn it into hate. We transmute it into prejudice because those are easier touchstones. So the work that I think is being asked of us right now, all of us adults, is to really dig deep and to heal our inner child so that we don't take it out on other people.